Hi, this is Shannon from No Shelf Control. Thanks for joining me on the channel tonight. We are on day 6 of the March tournament of books and have 2 more books going head to head today, of course. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce you to today's judge. So today's judge is Aminah Mae Safi, and here's what I know about her. It says, Aminah Mae Safi, the award-winning author of 4 novels, including Tell Me How You Really Feel, Travelers Along the Way, and the award-winning short story Be Cool for Once. It says, I've got a love of old movies, comics, and storytelling. I've contributed writing to Salon, Pub Crawl, and Bustle. I've taught writing in community settings, conferences, and universities. I'm currently regular visiting faculty in the low residency MFA program at Antioch University in LA and an instructor at the UCLA Extension's Creative Writing Department. It also says she's an erstwhile art historian, a fan of Cholula on popcorn, and an unironic lover of the Fast and Furious franchise. So that's interesting. She does use she, her pronouns, and that is what I know about Aminah Mae Safi. So what are our 2 books for today? That's always the next best question. The 2 books that we're going to talk about today are The Violin Conspiracy and Manhunt. The Violin Conspiracy is by Brendan Slocum, and Manhunt is by Gretchen Felker Martin. So let's talk about the synopses of each of these books. The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum, published February 1st, 2022 by Anchor Books, and it is 345 pages. Then we have Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. That was published February 22nd, 2022 by Nightfire, and it's 304 pages. So Manhunt is a little bit shorter than The Violin Conspiracy, but they were both published in February of last year. Let's look at the synopsis for The Violin Conspiracy. Here we go. It says, a mystery about a Black classical musician whose family heirloom violin is stolen on the eve of the most prestigious classical music competition in the world. Ray McMillian loves playing the violin more than anything, and nothing will stop him from pursuing his dream of becoming a professional musician. Not his mother, who thinks he should get a real job, not the fact that he can't afford a high-caliber violin, not the racism inherent in the classical music world. And when he makes the startling discovery that his great-grandfather's fiddle is actually a priceless Stradivarius, his star begins to rise. Then, with the International Tchaikovsky Competition, the Olympics of classical music, fast approaching, his prized family heirloom is stolen. Ray is determined to get it back, but now his family and the descendants of the man who once enslaved Ray's great-grandfather are each claiming that the violin belongs to them. With the odds stacked against him and the pressure mounting, will Ray ever see his beloved violin again? Ooh, that sounds spicy. I'm really interested in this one. It seems very accessible. It's a story that I could definitely get into and want to find out what happens. So the synopsis does a good job drawing me in on that one. That's The Violin Conspiracy. Very different from any of the other books we've read about in the tournament so far. It feels just a little bit more approachable to me than some of the others. So let's take a look at the cover. The Violin Conspiracy has this cutout from the violin there and a brown face peering through. And so I think it does a great job sort of visualizing what the story's about and is a really beautiful image. So excited about that. Let's look at the synopsis for Manhunt. Now, the cover on this one, I don't know what to say exactly. There's this mesh bag and it has blueberries in it. You know, if I'm being perfectly honest, I feel like this is meant to represent balls, but we shall see. So here we go. Actually, I just noticed at the bottom of the cover, it says Manhunt, the end of the world is nuts. So I may not be far off. Okay, let's see what we've got for the synopsis. It says, why? The last man meets the girl with all the gifts in Gretchen Felker Martin's Manhunt, an explosive post-apocalyptic novel that follows trans women and men on a grotesque journey of survival. Beth and Fran spend their days traveling the ravaged New England coast, hunting feral men and harvesting their organs in a gruesome effort to ensure they'll never face the same fate. Robbie lives by his gun and one hard-learned motto: other people aren't safe. After a brutal accident entwines the three of them, this found family of survivors must navigate murderous turfs, a sociopathic billionaire bunker brat, and awkward relationship dynamics, all while outrunning packs of feral men and their own demons. Manhunt is a timely, powerful response to every gender-based apocalypse story that failed to consider the existence of transgender and non-binary people from a powerful new voice in horror. Okay, so you know where this one is going to fall with me. Horror, not my thing. And it ends on that word, which immediately got my attention. But so definitely an interesting perspective. The whole idea that most post-apocalyptic fiction does not take into account trans and non-binary people and what the impact of that might have on this story will be. I'm very interested to find out. Unfortunately, I probably will not read it just because it's horror, but I am interested to hear what the judge has to say about it and how it stacks up against the Violin Conspiracy, which seems very, very different. So let's look at what Aminah Mae Safi has to say in general, in introduction to her judging. I think it's very interesting today. So here's what she says. What no one tells you about judging books is that any measure of taste relies solely on the whims of the judge. That's me, my whims, my tastes, my literary inclinations. We want to pretend like there's some objectivity in this game, but there isn't. I tell you from the start, I love a literary mystery. I tell you this from the start, I struggle with body horror. I didn't always, but having undergone a double mastectomy 18 months ago changes a body's perspective on the whole thing. My confessions do not make the following any more objective. Both Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin and The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum deal with the ways in which identity becomes intertwined with structural inequalities. In Manhunt, the metaphor is rooted in the barriers and violence placed before transgender women to prevent their very existence. The book is a brutal, riveting fight through those barriers, a horrific battle royale through the systemic oppression of trans women in specific and queer bodies at large. Then there's The Violin Conspiracy, which deals with the uphill battle that Black musicians face in the classical world. I couldn't help but think of Nina Simone, a classically trained pianist, and her unpaved road to Carnegie Hall. I kept thinking about unraveling the mystery of the red violin and who gets to inherit a lineage and a pedigree and who does not. The Violin Conspiracy is one driven by heartache and longing, to love a thing that doesn't always love you back, to refuse to give it up regardless. Perhaps this reveals more about me than the books, but I have such admiration for the vulnerability displayed on the pages of both of these two incredibly distinct works. To tell the truth involves showing yourself, whether you realize it or not. And contrary to popular maxims, fortune does not always favor the bold. Ah, but I do. So that is what she says in introduction to the judging of these two books. I think that was great. I love that she talked about both books a little bit. I love that she points out the ways in which they are similar and the ways in which they are different and gives credit to both books. So we shall see which one she likes better. Let's talk about what she says about Manhunt. So here we go. She says, in Manhunt, the world is overrun by feral men. A plague triggered by testosterone-fueled bodies might be seen as reductive and biologically deterministic by some readers. Yet, in using this as the feral man plague trigger, Felker Martin wields a metaphor that is simultaneously a subtle knife and a cosmic warhammer. We fall down the rabbit hole of the loopholes of every anti-trans belief. It is a gruesome wonderland, make no mistake about it. But it allows for those arguments to collapse in on themselves when made into textural reality. Manhunt is a staccato, frenetic book, a frenzy of a book. Reading it was like listening to the rite of spring for the first time. Told from multiple points of view, we largely follow Beth, Fran, and Robbie as they try to survive a world where men have gone feral, where a queer body is inherently vulnerable to the beliefs of the society around them. A world where few are safe and cults aren't just taking hold, they're thriving. Great horror is rooted in the body. It makes you feel. Manhunt exemplifies that feral bodily thing that is horror. The thrill of fear and of imagining what it is to have your body at the center of such a grim reality. That is where I come back to my own tastes. I do not find catharsis in body horror, for that is the aim of any real horror story, to root that dread and that nausea and that pain in the body so the audience may find relief on the other side. To feel and then release that horror. To decide that even in an environment of such deep feeling, fear has no power over you, that you are bigger than the worst of your fears. I say this because if you want a book that is rooted in the body, that is unapologetically queer, in a world where violence is dizzying, nauseating, and near constant, this is for you. If you want to challenge yourself with this kind of fear, this book is also for you. I know many who would find divine exorcism in a place of such extreme, and I don't want to minimize or belittle this kind of experiential release. Simply that I am not one who tends to experience it in any context. So that is what she says about Manhunt. I like that she points out who this would be a good book for. If you love horror, if you're willing to go in and through it and overcome it, and you feel that cathartic release when you experience horror and come out the other side, then this book is for you. But she stays true to the fact that it isn't for her. And I can tell you, it's not for me. So let's hear what she has to say about the Violin Conspiracy, because I am very interested in this one. She says, and now we come to the Violin Conspiracy. The book is an unrelenting crescendo, starting deceptively quiet and moving to that delicious kind of crashing boom you want in a symphony. The 1812 overture doesn't launch immediately into the bit with the cannons. No, it opens modestly with a few strings, one of the great musical bait and switches, if ever there was one. The Violin Conspiracy is the story of a black violinist, Ray, who discovers that his old, worn family fiddle is in fact a Stradivarius. If that doesn't give you the feeling that you're about to step into an old school fairy tale, the Grimm brothers kind, then I don't think I can help you. But our tale opens well after all that history has been lived out. The book opens with this, a theft of that great violin, the family fiddle turned heirloom. Here's the truth of a great mystery. You should be able to strap in for the ride, like you've buckled yourself into your seat on a roller coaster. The clicks start, and you know you've hit the point of no return. But you should also be able to feel clever and solve the puzzle if you like. You should be able to be both readers at once, enjoying the thrills and working the jigsaw pieces. That is the delight of a great mystery. Slocum gives you all the clues to piece together the Violin Conspiracy in The Violin Conspiracy. And an experienced mystery reader might find the puzzle more obvious than they'd like. That, I believe, is the price of wrapping a coming-of-age story within the trappings of a double mystery. And yet the Violin Conspiracy takes you along for the ride, too. You're swept up in the hunt, both for the violin and for its historical lineage. The violin has its own story and its own secrets. They are just as compelling as not knowing the whodunit of it all. But the piece that caught me the most off guard is the sense of distance we so often get in adult novels when moving into a past, the place where our protagonist is in his youth. I reveal myself again here. I largely write and read for young people, and so when I start the pages with such a close third, so in Ray's mind, only to be pulled out with the perspective of an adult remembering, I can't help but confess my disappointment. The Violin Conspiracy has such a sense of young Ray's hopes and desires. It paints a picture of the kinds of adults who nurture artistic dreams versus those who feel it is kinder, or perhaps just more satisfying, to crush such notions earlier rather than later. And yet we are not quite as emotionally with young Ray the way we are with the older Ray. This is perhaps a convention of adult literature versus that written for the young adult. But I couldn't help but think that there could have been room for both here, as there was already room for a literary mystery, a thriller, and a Bildungsroman throughout these pages. I love a book that leaves me asking big questions. I love a book where I can see that the author stepped into the arena willing to go down swinging. Perhaps that makes me the ultimate winner in this showdown, getting to read and play with the intertextuality between these seemingly disparate works. What is an inheritance? What is a legacy? What is it to take up space in the world? What is it to go on fighting, even though you know the fight has been rigged against you from the start? So that's what she says about the Violin Conspiracy. I love everything that she pointed out there. I'm not terribly bothered by the fact that she feels closer to the older Ray than the younger Ray, and that perhaps the writing is stronger there. But I do appreciate that she pointed out that that's a gap and something that bothered her. Clearly, she really enjoyed this book, both the mystery, the thriller part, and the coming-of-age story. I, as you know, love a good coming-of-age story, and if you can throw a mystery and a thriller on top of that, that's definitely something that I want to check out. So, I think we know where she's going with this, but let's read her judgment and see who's going forward in the tournament. She says, "For Manhunt, to take up space is to brawl, to fight with everything you have as long as you draw breath. But it's the instability of inheritance presented in the Violin Conspiracy that I find myself returning to as an idea and a question. The violin is both given and taken, handed down and stolen, lost to time and of proven provenance. And so we return back to my whims, to my love of paradox and my delight in an instrument that can hold so many truths at once." And she has chosen the Violin Conspiracy. And I completely see the logic when she lays it out the way she does. And of course, having my own personal bias against horror, I absolutely understand her judgment. So I hope you enjoyed this today. Those were 2 more books. That was match number 6 in round 1. I will be back tomorrow, Friday, with match 7 in round 1. We have 1 more match after that on Monday in round 1, and then we will move on to round 2. So I hope that you are really enjoying following this tournament and this series of videos that I've been creating for it. If you are, please click like and subscribe. Also, come back tomorrow and Monday to watch the rest of round 1. I can't wait to tell you what's coming up. We'll talk soon. Thanks.